And I'd like to say a warm welcome to the northern Ardennes of Belgium, but in fact it is extremely cold, barely above freezing. I would think with the chill factor it is at freezing point. There is even snow threatened in the Ardennes today for this, the 63rd running of the Flèche Wallonne, the Wallonne arrow race, and this itself, although not a counter in the World Cup, has managed to keep its identity and, if anything, improve in popularity. It's based right here where we're approaching now on the wall of Huy. The town of Huy in the Ardennes, hosting this race for some years now. They climb this mountain, and that's really what it is. It's a 20% incline, something like 3 times. They finish at the top of it, and we are now approaching it for the second time. 13 riders have got themselves clear, and in this breakaway we've got Patrick Jonker of Rabobank, and other riders of note up here too include the Cofidis rider Bobby Julich. Now they're only about 50 seconds ahead of the main field, which is getting smaller by the minute as riders decide to climb off. It really is most unpleasant conditions. We expect to see riders in March and perhaps February dressed like this, but not in April. Although those of us that know Belgium in April, well, anything really can happen. This is a most beautiful area, and what a contrast to last week's, well, only 4 days ago in fact, the Paris-Roubaix last Sunday, when the weather was sunny and fine, and that great victory by Andrea Taffy. Well, Taffy taking a rest now, as too is Frank van den Broek, and so we're likely to see a new winner today. No Jan Ullrich starting today either, which is interesting because his build-up for the Tour de France still not really on course, is it? There's Bobby Julich off to the right of our picture here, and just tucking in to the left we've got Patrick Jonker. Never sure whether to call him an Australian or a Dutchman. At the moment he's got a Dutch racing licence, but he rumours that he'll become an Australian next year because he wants to ride the Olympic Games in Sydney for Australia, which is indeed where he lives. Now, first chance to see the climb here now as the riders make their way steadily up it. A little bit of an acceleration coming now, and this looks like Patrice Halgon of the Festina team, who's trying to get clear of the field as he builds up a little lead. Tried to get something going, I think, because as you can see the main field is now on the climb itself, not very far down. I doubt whether it's much more than 30 seconds now, and the field is still quite large considering that the weather is so cold and absolutely miserable today. 188 on the start line this morning, and the race distance 200 kilometres. Once over the top of this climb they'll know they're inside 100 kilometres on the finish, something like 92 kilometres left to go. This is Jens Voigt, part of that leading group, also trying to get a little bit of action going. Halgon, who really wants to do something to put Festina back on the map, I think, because after the disgrace of the Tour de France we've seen nothing of this team at all. They completely, well, almost completely revamped their team after the Tour de France debacle last year, and now we'll have to wait and see if they can indeed become once again a team to be reckoned with, or was it really all done on the benefit of doping? We'll find out as time unfolds, I'm sure. So the field continuing then to try and get something going here as the breakaways continue to build up. You caught a glimpse there of Jurgen Gunz, the Belgian rider of Flanders in 2002 in the yellow jersey. He's up in this breakaway. Jens Voigt having a great season, winner by a centimetre of the Criterium International, ahead of the British rider David Miller from Cofidis, who's a surprise starter in this race today. Even he didn't realise he was coming to it, but he's here somewhere. We haven't seen anything of him. Julich anxious to get something going as well as they continue now to whip up the pace. Sadly, the race without last year's very emphatic winner, Bo Hamburger, the Dane, simply because he's had a really torrid start to the new year. He's had a back problem, he's been in hospital, had his back operated on, and he's still not anywhere like race fit. Let's hope he can get himself back into the action in time for the Tour de France. He's still got a few weeks to do that if he can get in some of the late tours that build up for the Tour de France, like the Dauphiné, the Midi-Libre and the Tour of Switzerland. Now back to the main field here now. Looks like a little bit of trouble viewing here. It looks as though Michele Bartoli spoke to his teammate there and wanted a little bit more action from him. The rider who Bartoli shouted at was his old faithful Paolo Bettini, and Bettini has powered forward there and decided that he wants to do something about this leading breakaway. Interesting to see that Bartoli taking an interest at this stage. Marco Velo is the Mercatoni Uno rider up here in this leading group, just going through in that yellow jersey. Now this seems to be the signal here for a group to start working at the front of the peloton. They've smelt the fact that they are very close to picking up the leaders, and a lot of riders willing now to try and get things moving. Thierry Bourguignon, saw him just go through for the Big Mat team. Swiss champion passed through our picture there. And Michael Bogart, tipped by many for a win today, but Bogart himself saying if he's going to win it, he's got to be ahead of the stars before they come to the last climb of the Huy, which is now about 89 kilometres away, because they say he doesn't think he'll have the power to drag people like Bartley towards the summit and still hold them off in the sprint. But it looks to me as though they started to pick up the remnants of that breakaway, or the breakaway itself is getting a little bit larger because they've reached them very, very quickly over the top of the climb. You can see the weather on our cameras now. It started to ease off at the bottom by the Meuse, but it's now started to get much, much colder again. Andrei Kivilev, the Kazakh rider for Festina, turned pro at the start of last season, had a great first year. Number 5 going through, Massimiliano Gentili for the Cantina team. Yellow for danger, remember, in Europe, as the riders make this left flick away now on this big circuit, which isn't flat by any means, and the conditions of the road surface, although basically very good roads here in the Northern Ardennes. This is a most attractive part of Belgium, believe it or not, because when the sun comes out, there really is nowhere else you'd wish to be. And it looks to me either we're looking here now at the head of the peloton, or there's been a steady increase of riders in this front group. Rabobank deciding now it's time to try and pull Michael Bogart into the thick of the action here now. They've had their man in that breakaway, and we're going up to it here with the camera from the helicopter, so they've reduced that from 40 seconds. There's one rider there. Looks like a Française de Jeu rider, so it could be Vogenby. And in fact, it's this rider here who's just accelerated away from the field, and it's the Benesto rider. And so that's interesting, because Benesto are not having a good year at all. This is César Solon, the Spaniard on the best Benesto team, who's now trying to launch an attack. Not exactly a big man when it comes to looking at victories over the years gone by, but he looks as though he's trying to start something now for Benesto, because they've come here really not with a great team at all, but they at least are taking part in the races in the area of Belgium and France at this time of the year. The Spanish teams really don't like the spring classics in this region. The weather doesn't suit them, the road surfaces don't suit them. They're a little bit more affinity shown towards this type of race, the Flèche Wallonne, and of course the upcoming Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which is just in the weekend ahead. This used to be, and still is, in effect, the Ardennes weekend, but they used to be run Saturday and Sunday. Now they run Wednesday and Sunday, but there's still the rider with the best overall positions on aggregate receives a special award as winner of the Ardennes weekend. Liggett, 87 kilometres to go now to the finish, and it looks as though we're trying to shape a decisive move here. It's around this point, usually a little bit later actually, around about 45-50 kilometres to go when the final moves are made, but it looks as though Solon is trying now to shape this race from the front as he disappeared into the narrow roads. Benesto, since they lost Miguel Indurain, haven't really been the team to reckon with. They're relying very heavily this year on Jimenez to do well in the Giro d'Italia and possibly in the Tour de France. But as the sport now occupies a lot of its time trying to combat drug taking, there is clearly a lot of swinging in riders' form, for whatever reason you may wish to say for yourselves. Now it looks as though that lead group is up to around about 15 to 20 riders got clear. And here's a little bit of the route for you. We've done the big leg from Charleroi where the race started. We've done the little blue leg. We're now out on the red leg, which takes us around these small hills up towards the finish, which will bring us back up the Huy and the finish. By the way, the Belgians, not surprisingly, should do well in their own race. They've won this race 35 times, but they haven't won it in fact for 10 years. And that was with their Lion of Flanders, as they used to call him, Claude Criquillon. Crick the Lion was his nickname. And they haven't had a victory since 1989, and ironically he was also the previous Belgian before that in 1985. And if you're looking for a different name, then you go back to 1981. Willems, Daniel Willems, who got the victory then. That was over 240 kilometres, but the race has come down in length really over these past few years because it's bridging between the two big World Cup classics, I suspect. Instead of 250 and 240 kilometres, it's now just 200, and it's an excellent race as a bridge for the riders midweek. And of course, I think it still stands out on its own. But when you get weather like this, there's a reminder it is spring there from the blossoms. But you wouldn't believe it from being out there today. We started at 3 degrees Celsius, which I think is barely 38 degrees Fahrenheit. And I would say, as I said earlier, with the chill factor, I believe you'll be absolutely freezing down there today. Spoken from the heart, because I spent many a wet cycle race in Belgium. And this area at least will have some hills to break it up. The national champion's jersey, easy to pick out down there, of Michael Bogart. The red top of the champion of Holland. He had a great start to the year with his victory in Paris-Nice. The Côte de France, but we are in Belgium by the way, just approximately 9% or 1 in 11. If you talk in the old terms like I sometimes do, as Festina trying to keep this race plenty of action on the front. Patrice Algan still up there. And there's no doubt now that ever since we came over the Huy with one big circuit to go, there's a number of riders now testing other riders. This is Bettini again, or is it Bartoli? This might be Bartoli is going. They ride very similarly, especially from a helicopter shot, but it looks to me like it is Michele Bartoli. Now Bartoli told Bettini to move to the front and start to toughen it up a bit as he came over the top of the Huy. Now this might be the reason why, because here on the Côte de France, Bartoli has launched a lone attack, and at the moment it looks to me as though he's trying to go clear. Somebody's coming up to him. Now it looks like a Rabobank rider has got across to him, and one other rider. So we've got 3. Well, the other rider looks like it's Kamazin, the world champion, is tagged on. Let's go back down. This is the chase group. This isn't the lead group we're looking at here. There's 3 riders trying to get together. Oh no, it is indeed Bartoli, and he's in fact been joined here by the Rabobank rider, and the Rabobank rider is in fact Marcus Zeberg, and it's a Credit Agricole rider who's come up, and this is Cedric Vasseur, former leader of the Tour de France. His dad Alain, stage winner of the Tour de France, but Vasseur now onto the back with Marcus Zeberg, a rider who rides so well in these classics. Come across this year from the Swiss Post team, where he sort of has been discovered, if you like, with his results in the Tour of Spain last year, a couple of stage wins, top and tail of the Tour of Spain, and now been taken up by Jan Ross. Interesting move, coming with an awful long way to race here. Bartoli perhaps inviting others to come across the gap to join. Well, they might be on the way because they're still working pretty hard here. Bogart in second wheel, and he's got a little bit of a group coming across now. Kamazin is in this group now. The world champion, his white jersey standing out. It looked as though the colours of Credit Agricole was a white jersey from that helicopter shot we got a little bit earlier, but he's still here. It's nice to see world champion taking part at the sharp end of the action, having remembered that Kamazin won his first big race of the season last year, and it was the world title. But he certainly consolidated after that with a victory in the Tour of Lombardy. So 2 wins isn't bad when you get those sort of races on your honours list for the season. Now Bartoli here appears to have gone again. He's waited till some riders have joined him, and he's launched yet another attack. And I have to say the weather is going downhill, even if Michele Bartoli isn't, because this rain is getting a little bit heavier here. So we've gone over the climb of the Côte de France. And can you believe this morning they forecast snow in the region, and you can see now it's almost sleet as it rips across our camera lens down by the helicopter there. 79 kilometres to go. And that big field now is spread right across the northern Ardennes here. This seems to be the forward group of strong men or brave men. About 30 strong maybe, and you know there are flecks of snow in that rain now as the weather continues to crack wide open. But there's a group trying to get away here and rip up to this, looks like little Massalia, who's trying now to bridge the gap as well, and Martin Dembacker, I think it is, on his wheel. So Bartoli has gone, and these 2 are trying to reach him. Now these roads are twisty. They're obviously very dangerous right now because they're pretty wet. The tyres will be not too hard, I wouldn't imagine, because the riders had plenty of warning of this bad weather today before they rolled away from Charleroi. Scene of the Tour de France about 15 years ago where we had the start. 4 riders trying to get themselves all together there now. And building steadily. The Lamprey rider, Massalia, dropping back, and he's let the, I think it's Den Bakker, go forward, and he's come back to that chase group. So it is Martin Den Bakker, who says he's on his best form ever. He had a brilliant Paris-Roubaix, but a lot of bad luck. He was brought down, in fact, by Frank Vandenbroek. Just look at this rain, and there's Camazin going across now. So he's shot out of that group as Massalia went back to him, and I think it was Massalia. Camazin has decided now to try and get across to Martin Den Bakker, former Dutch champion, and see if they can pull back Bartley. Well, there's Bartley just there, so we're going to have 3 riders in the lead, and the gauntlet down again to anybody that wants to join them. They are attacking, remember, in what is the worst conditions of the day so far, and they're facing at the moment around about 78 kilometres to the finish, so the best part of 2 hours. It's a long time to stay out front, just 3 of you, but anyway, they've thrown the gauntlet down. Oscar Camazin, the world champion, whose season started this year in the Tour Down Under in Australia, when he wasn't a real player, but he certainly got himself some nice form because the weather was superb, and what a contrast now. And he must be wishing he was back in South Australia, and Adelaide in particular, where at times the weather topped 100 degrees or over 40 degrees Celsius, and now we're barely 40 degrees Fahrenheit. What a change. Anyway, he's got plenty of speed in those legs now as he's trying, along with Michele Bartoli and Martin Den Bakker, to establish a little gap over the field here to allow only the strong riders to cross it. There's the man who says his form has never been better, who enjoyed immensely Paris-Roubaix, and there aren't many people can say that, but at the end of the day, bad luck took him out of the chance of a real top position. Well, I think we can confirm snow is falling in the Ardennes now, because that certainly looks like it to me. No wins for Camazin yet this year, as he sits there. And he's won a total of 14 races in his career, which started only in 1996 as a pro. Lamprey have picked him up. A very good climber, should enjoy the Giro, and he shouldn't get too much of this weather, but you know you can in the Tour of Italy when you get up onto the high mountains of the Dolomites. The pictures are rife of Andy Hampson racing through snowstorms in the Giro d'Italia. I'm very, very surprised to see that 3 big names have gone and nobody has come across, and it must be because of the weather. They're all going to... There was a whole... So there's 2 riders now trying to bridge the gap. There's a whole series of attacks there, and it makes you wonder whether these riders are just huddling together now strictly for the warmth of the day, because you're going to have to feel a little bit sorry for them, I think. They shouldn't be too surprised with weather like this. It'll be a bit of a shock to the 2 Italians, I would think, although Martin Den Bakker might be used to it. Bartoli is saying something there, goodness knows in what language. He certainly won't speak Dutch, as he wants Den Bakker to come through and do a little bit more work. And Bartoli gets the bit between his teeth. He just lays down on that bicycle and really goes quickly. Camazin doesn't seem to be enjoying. In fact, Camazin doesn't seem to be enjoying it at all. He may have caught a glimpse of his face there, the spray coming up. These are the chasers. Well, Patrice Holgon has done very well to be still in on this one, because he was in the original breakaway, and he's still out in front trying to get across the gap here. Now, I'm not sure whether he can or not, but we'll see. And he's getting plenty of help at the moment from the Flandern 2002 rider, Jurgen Gunz, the Belgian. Well, with every respect to these 2 riders, they've hardly got the known firepower, should I say, in their legs to get up to those 3 riders out in front. Nicky Ebersol, the Swiss champion. Good job that cross isn't red, or they'll all get worried as they start now to straighten out his glasses, and a little bit of sitting up at the back. We look down now on the white jersey of Oscar Camazin. 2 wins last year. He was the first rider, by the way, since Koblet from Switzerland to win the World Championship. And Koblet won the last title for the World Professional Championship for Switzerland in 1951. So you can imagine the welcome home he got, and it wasn't a lucky win at all. It was a very, very good win indeed. The year before that he was the Swiss national champion, so he only seems to pick the big wins. He doesn't seem to bother with the little races, he just uses them for training. Here is Guns, making steady progress, but they're not actually gaining on those leaders at the moment. The Nursery team, 2002, has turned out one or two good riders of late and passed them on to the bigger teams. There are three distinct divisions now in professional cycling: third division, second, and the elite first division teams. And ideally, as the riders get better and better in the lower teams, they're snapped up and given more money to ride in the elite teams. Now we're going to get a lot of this picture breakup, I fear, today, because the weather is deteriorating, and by its very nature we race a lot in wooded countryside in the Flèche Wallonne, and that will not help the signals going up towards the helicopter from the motos today. Now, big effort there by Michele Bartoli, and the same coming through from the other two. These three riders are looking very strong now. Perhaps indeed it was a recovery process for Camazin. He seems to be okay now. There's the situation, a minute 24 already. This is an enormous gap, already going back now to Holgan and Daniel. Well, there's no way those two are going to get up here. They're actually losing ground at the minute, and we're out on the big circuit with a couple of short, sharp climbs to come as well before the Huy. Now, this is not the sort of system that Rabobank wanted, really. They were hoping they would have had Bogard up here, but Dembacker, they accept, has the great form. 70 kilometres still to race. It's a long way to go. But we're looking at three riders who know all about long time breakaways when it comes down to it. Dembacker, an old hand. This is his 9th pro season, and he's now 30 years of age. So he turned pro at the ripe old age of 21, and he's only won 18 races, but he has been such a threat. I mean, the biggest disaster of his life was when his sister died, and which caused him to withdraw from the Tour de France on most sad occasion a couple of years ago. But he seems to have come back and continued to race with great determination. 67 kilometres from the finish now. He was the national champion of Holland before Michael Bulgaert took over the mantle. And one of his best results, I suspect he will tell you, was back in 1994 when he finished second in the Tour de l'Avenir, which is or was on those occasions, the smaller Tour de France, the race of the future, which is what it actually means. And there seems to be a problem here because Camazin has dropped off the tail of those three for some reason. Back to the chase group. Once the big losers at the moment. I'm trying now to put things to rights because Jalabert is in here somewhere. One or two riders now trying to organise a chase because it doesn't look as though there's great evidence of teammates trying to slow down the counter move here. The Côte d'Aref, 12% climb. Nothing's ever greatly distanced. This is only 2.2 kilometres. The wall itself at the finish is barely a mile. It's approximately just over 3/4 actually. As Camazin's okay, he's back with the group here and setting on the pace on the Côte d'Aref. Compact little man, Bartoli. Well, the Côte d'Aref is about 60 kilometres from the finish when they get over the top of it. Bartoli with his long fingered gloves on. Surprising, he hasn't got leg warmers on, but sometimes it's most unpleasant to have wet legs as well. Camazin dropping back to have a word with his manager, who I'm sure is delighted to see that their world champion is starting to feature a little bit earlier than last year when he wasn't, of course, the world champion. But he's now having to take on the mantle of being a star, and when you pull on the rainbow jersey, well, I guess you feel as though you should be in the action because after all you are the top dog. Bartoli, world number one. Camazin, because of his 2 victories last year, which were exceptional, is now world number 7. Further down the Côte d'Urèf here, and the Oncé boys trying to get something going. And this is to the bunch now, so we picked up the 2 riders in between. And because of the reaction by the Oncé, they're now limiting the escape inside 2 minutes. Bartley getting a bit of food out of his back pocket and just making sure nothing's going to go wrong in what remains in about the last 37 miles to go to the finish. Well, it's gone up again now, and it's going up as we look at the clock. 2 minutes 8 seconds. Well, this is an extraordinary escape if this one does succeed. Nobody assisting Oncé. One of Bartley's teammates got himself in on the action there right now to try and interfere with the pace. I think that in fact 2 of the Mappé boys have got themselves up there. And little flurries of snow still falling here in the Ardennes. There's a history of these mountains stretching back right through into France as they form part of the Massif Central, which takes you right down into the area of the Puy-de-Dôme. This is the area, by the way, where we had the famous Battle of the Bulge during World War II. And there's still plenty of evidence of American tanks in some of the cities, like Bastogne, which is happy memories in many ways for the Belgians. Sadness, of course, but basically they don't forget those that were saved by the Americans. And this race itself, having started back in 1936, when de Meersman was the winner, it was the brainchild of a couple of journalists, as most of the international races were in France and Belgium. Started from a Brussels newspaper called Sports, and it stopped really since then only for the First World War, because in fact it never, apart from 1940, as the war was gathering momentum, it was actually held in 1941, 2, 3 and 4. So during the war years it was in fact held, although it wasn't held before 1936, because that was when it was founded. And just look at those fields covered in mud, and it looks now like Laurent Jalabert here, he's not terribly happy with the way things are going. He's got his racing cape on, just gathering in the miles, I think, sitting right down at the back end of the peloton, letting his teammates do the chasing, and if they get close to the leaders, then he might come to the front. Otherwise, I think he's just going to sit there by the look at it. He doesn't look at all concerned with the way the race is going. He looks unhappy. Champion of France. He's got his own problems this year. He has a Swiss racing licence because he's fallen out with the French Federation, and it wouldn't surprise me if they retaliate by stopping him riding in any of the Federation's events this year, which would of course be the World Championships, the French national title, where he has to defend his title, would like to defend his title, I'm sure. He could well find himself not able to do so in June. Back to the leaders. Doesn't look like there's any passengers up here, does it? Heading up to the next small climb now. Oh, this is the downhill. Sorry, this is the downhill, 6%. Camazin. And if it's downhill, Camazin's out of the saddle here, and Bartley and Dembacker. 2 Italians versus a Dutchman on Belgian roads. And the Belgians are beginning to lose their grip on the Flèche Wallonne over the years, because it had a whole variety of different winners. Bo Hamburger from Denmark last year. Laurent Jalabert won it in 97 and 95. And the man who split those 2 victories was Lance Armstrong of the United States, with a wonderful victory in 96. And then we had the Italians, Argentin, Fondriest, Furlan. Argentin twice before that, the man of the Fleche. He won it 3 times and has joined the record held by Marcel Kint, who did it in 43, 44 and 45. And Eddie Merckx, of course, who seems to be on every record book, he did it in 1967, 70 and 72. The hills continue as we go on to the Côte d'Ossogne, 50 kilometres from the finish here. And the snow, as we get up just those few metres, again coming down. A couple of brave spectators out there today. But actually there's a huge crowd, as you probably saw as they climbed up the Huy. Huge crowd waiting for the finish, but you know, even the Huy itself, there's only one cafe on the top of that climb, and it gets rather busy. And otherwise, I'm afraid you're stuck out in the open air. So you've got to be a pretty brave man if you follow the Flèche Wallonne in weather conditions like this. The actual town of Huy, which is on the River Meuse, a river which, if you just stay on the banks of it, you'll go directly into Holland. It's only literally down the road. Is a lovely little town, as many of these spa towns are in the area. Race for many years used to start at Spa and finish in Huy. Spa is where they have a mountain bike World Cup race, or they have had in the past. Here comes Bartoli. 4 wins this year for Michele at the moment. He won the stage of the Tour of Andalusia. He won a stage in the Tour of Valencia. And of course his big claim to fame this year was the overall classification, without winning a stage by the way, in Tirreno Adriatico. And he also has just won Fleche and Brabançon. He loves racing in Belgium, which is strange for the Italians, but the odd Italians always done well in Belgium. Argentin was the other man who always rode well here, and Francesco Moser rode well, especially in the Paris-Roubaix. And Fondriest, who actually rode for the Dutch team Panasonic, he used to ride well before he had his back problems in the Belgium area and in the French zones, because most Italians really don't like coming out of Italy. But I think that trend is changing now. Mind you, having seen the weather today, they might want to go back, and I can't blame them for that. On the poultry riders there, I think it was David Rebellin caught with his mouth full there as he put all his food in and held onto the handlebars for that tricky right-hander on what are now extremely slippery conditions. This race, by the way, part of the Tour de France organisation now. The Société du Tour de France are organisers of this event, as they are with the Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and that's why the cars you're seeing down there look very familiar to those used in the Tour de France, and that's because they are the same cars. But Bartoli is showing no fear at all of the descent. You do well to shy clear of those white lines, because so often they can become slippery. But where has Camazin gone? Because Camazin is somewhere at the back, and Bartoli is pushed on here as we go on to the Côte de Boisseau. Another one, as steep this in fact as the Huy itself, but not quite as long. Now I don't see, we've lost Camazin, he's dropped back somewhere, and that doesn't all well, leaving just 2 riders, but at the moment the gap is up and continues to be up. Here's Michael Bogart, still trying very hard to do something. He's in a little bit of a compromised position now because of his man up front. He knows that Dembaka is on form. He knows that probably he could win this race, although Bartoli is the big worry for everybody here. As these riders now looking a little bit grim-faced, aren't they, on the climb? This is when it's not such a glorious thing to be a professional bike rider, but these races have to be completed. And let's hope that they don't find themselves in 10 days' time getting a sore throat and all the usual things that follow for a few weeks. What a bleak picture that is. Could be the World Cyclocross Championship right now. But instead it's Michele Bartoli. Continues on. 39 wins as a professional. Bartoli turned pro in the August of 1992. And he's now just 29 years of age, and he's only 24 kilometres from the finish. Almost a kilometre for each year. Now there's a counter-attack coming off the bottom here. This is the Lotto team. Mario Ertz. Long, tall Mario, who is developing into quite a good bike rider. Here's Mario Ertz. And he's got Bogart with him. Now this is an interesting move here. Bogart could have a free lift up to the front if it could work out. Here's Camazin, and he seems to be in no man's land. Now Bogart may well be approaching Camazin along with Ertz. From what I can understand from the cars here, Camazin has dropped back because he could not undo the zip or something on his World Championship jersey, and he wanted to zip the neck up. He's changed his jersey, in fact, so maybe we'll see that if we can get a glimpse before it gets too dirty. But I'll tell you what, if he dropped back just for something like that and not through fatigue, and he's been joined here by these two now, then I would think that Dembaka and Bartoli will not be his favourite riders after today, because that's not really the sporting thing to do. Riders do not attack riders who are just doing something like taking a drink or a natural break or whatever, or a puncture. We usually allow them to come back. But in fact, maybe Kamazin can get back up there now, because he's been joined by Mario Ertz and Martin Den Bakker. Atrocious conditions. And 3 minutes 20, so Kamazin went back big time, didn't he? But it's not that far back, in fact, to the main field. What's left of it, about 30 riders coming up at 3:45. We've gone back to the two leaders here. I hope we'll get to see them through to the finish, because our camera lens is getting a little bit covered in snow or sleet just now. So the race continues to tumble down towards the finish. We've got just a small climb of the Côte d'Ain to come, which is 11 kilometres from the finish. Then we drop down to the banks of the Meuse, cross over the Meuse, and then we're up onto the Muir de Huy. Bartley here churning a big gear now, whereas a little bit more gentle pedalling, a bit more souplesse coming from Martin Den Bakker. Mario Ertz, who we've just seen on the counter-attack, he's a typical man that's moving through the ranks in the nursery team of Flandre in 2002. That's where he started. He's only been a pro, this is his third season as a pro. He's trying to come up now with Michael Bogart and Kamazin. There's the Meuse. And we're 14, nearly 15 kilometres from the finish. Looks rather pristine, neat and tidy, doesn't it? Which carries all the barges which ply between Belgium, France, Germany and Holland. Surprisingly quiet today. I don't even think that one's moving. Probably the weather depressing just about everybody. On the smooth highways now, as the riders race down towards the finishing line. Still these two in the lead. Took a big gamble today, but Bartley must have felt something, because when he signalled Bettini to start the pace, start sharpening up the pace, then I think he was saying to himself, I'm going to have a go. And it looks to me as though he got something going there. And well done to Den Bakker and Kamazin, who spotted it. And I think it's rather unfortunate that Kamazin is not still here. But look at this now, as Bartley is just testing now Den Bakker to see how he's going, because the climb of the Puy could well decide it. And I would say will decide it right now. Den Bakker not putting so much into it now. Maybe he's struggling just that little bit. And we haven't suffered too much from picture breakup. We're getting a little bit of it now in the trees here. Bartley, winner of Liège-Bastogne-Liège last year, third in the Amstel Gold, and of course the not only the world number one but also the World Cup holder. He had an absolutely magical 1998 season, and he looks good again. He's had the World Cup in fact for the last 2 years, and he's also won back-to-back Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He was fourth, by the way, in Flèche Wallonne in 97, so that's 2 years ago now. And to complete his record in this event, he was also fifth here last year. Now he's looking for the win, and I think there's only one man going to spoil it for him, possibly, and that's the Rabobank Dutchman alongside him, because the field behind are slipping out of contention here. Preoccupied now in the minor placings. We're not very far from the finish, and these two are throwing it around a little bit together. Rabobank starting to fight their way in to what is becoming for them one of the best early seasons, I think, since the team was formed. And of course, this is the team which is the elite section of what is a real cycling team. It spreads right down to the schoolgoers and the young cyclists coming through. It's a complete cycling sponsorship, the Rabobank team in Holland, and very popular it is too. And they're not very far away. Just across the border is the main base for them, over by Maastricht, which is only a drive of maybe half an hour or so, depending on the traffic, of course. And it looks as though Den Bakker has an earpiece there, so he'll be getting all the information. He'll know what the chase is like behind, if there is such a thing right now. They are freezing cold, these riders, although it doesn't show here on the face of Michele Bartoli. But he's got a clean pair of gloves on there, which indicates to me he's been to the car. We didn't see him go, and he's changed his gloves for the damp, sodden ones, because they were black from memory at the start of the race, so he's changed his gloves, so don't blame him either. That's one advantage of being a top professional. At least you can go back and do the best that you can in the situation. They're really struggling now just to keep this pace high. Those leg muscles must be absolutely freezing here, and just getting in and out of the saddle will help, rather than sit in the same position and slowly get cold. I bet Bartley thought he'd done away with his long sleeve jerseys this year. So too the Rabobank rider as well. No further time checks coming, but the gap is still up at the minute, and it's still around about 2.5, 2 3/4 minutes over the chase group, who are not very far ahead, in fact, of what's left of the main field. Marty Jemison's in that main field. I think he's the only US postal rider left in it. Well, there's the weather, as if we needed reminding. It's now 3 degrees, as I told you earlier. Very light winds indeed, coming in from the north. But frankly, it's not the wind they're worried about, it's the way that cold and very wet and damp rain is soaking through those arms. They're on the way down towards Huy now, and once they get down there, then they'll be heading up towards the wall. The race returning to its start in Charleroi this time, for the first time for many, many years, in fact. Becchia of Italy won the last race that went to Charleroi to Spa, which is where the race went to start from 1986 in the town of Spa. But 1982 was the last time the race made a start from Charleroi. And Charleroi, which is Belgium's 5th largest city, by the way, has always played its part in this event. And in 1948 through to 1959, it was the start town. Then it became the finishing town. I thought you'd like this as a bit of a history lesson. Finishing town in 1960 through to 1964. So it's always been part of the Fleche. And these two riders, a Dutchman and an Italian, and I would think a very irate and upset Oscar Camazin from Switzerland. And that's a point earlier, I think I called them both Italian, so I hope you spotted that, because I didn't, but I just realised I called Camazin an Italian because of his Italian sponsor, but of course he's not, he's Swiss. The drab and dreary fields of the Ardennes. Wonderful cycling country when the sun comes out, absolutely superb for cycle touring. Some of the beautiful sights, the towns, lovely accommodation, very, very quaint places, and very narrow roads, not a lot of traffic. I really couldn't recommend this area more highly for cycling, but you do get caught out occasionally in the weather. Why don't you ask me Kelly Bartley? But this man, this is one race he hasn't got on his honours list over the years, and he's done most of them. And Dembaka, not a big winner, but this year showing his finest ever form. As they slowly but surely, in the snow or sleet, make the way. Well, it's 3 minutes now, so it's still going up, and Bogart, Ertz and Camazin are still on the counter move here, and they've managed to just pull out a little more than a minute over that field. Now, we're having difficulty bringing you pictures of anybody else except the two leaders, because the weather has claimed one of our motorbikes. We've had a crash, and the Belgian television has lost one of its motos, hopefully without injury, but it means we can't transmit the pictures from Moto 2 at the moment. So we're having to stay with the two leaders all of the time, and just look at these conditions. I hope we can see them through to the finish right now, because the sleet is on the lens of the camera. And this is when I fully admire too, not just the bike riders, but the moto pilots and the very brave cameramen who will not stop looking through that little tiny lens and swivelling around on the back of that motorbike to make sure we get the pictures as clear as he can possibly give them to us, while at the same time caring little, it seems, about his own well-being. And thank heavens for the camera out of the helicopter today, which is sending us some pretty good pictures considering. And you see, whenever this goes downhill, this course, Bartley just rides away from Dembaka, and it's unusual to see a Dutchman quite so cautious. They tend to be terrific bike handlers from Holland, but at the moment it's little Bartley who is handling the affair better. 8% descent here as we begin to run away out of these narrow roads. And again, look at this, look at the gap which Bartley has opened on Dembaka. This is not an attack, he's not trying to do anything other than get to the finish as fast as he can, but he's taking just that little bit of a risk. And you know, it's always easier to lead than follow down a mountain, because you see your own track down, whereas a rider who tries to match the speed of somebody else often makes a mistake. And the right-hander using the apex of the corner by Bartley. Just on 7 seasons as a pro now, Michele Bartley. Running out of the woods now, away. It will soon be on the bottom of the valley road. This is the tight turn which will take us down onto the main road. Bartley continuing to accelerate out of those corners, and Dembaka having to use that little bit more energy to close the gap. He can never allow Bartley any length at all here. He's got to jump on him. Just 3 miles from the finish now, so we'll be on the bottom briefly into the town of Huy. The last mile is all uphill. There's the main road, such as it is. All the traffic, of course, is not allowed on it today for the arrival of the Fleche. And now Dembaka will say, well, it's all or nothing now. Just the one climb lies ahead. It's virtually downhill into the town of Huy. Bartley in that beautiful time trial position. He looks such a nice, neat, compact rider. And these two are going to be so pleased to see the finish. The big legs there of the 1996 Dutch champion before Michael Bogart took over for a couple of years. Bogart now in the chase group behind, but will be coming in as the passenger. I wonder if he'll be able to snatch third on the line, because he's going to be involved in a sprint, I would think, between Mario Ertz and Oscar Camazin. Ertz now part of the Lotto team, having moved across from the nursery Flandre in 2002. A lot of people talking about young Ertz as a real star of the future, and Belgium, as we know, seem to have found one with Frank van den Broek after his great ride in his first Paris-Roubaix. He was 7th. And he's also been intruding in the other big races this year as well. He just needs to stop falling off quite so frequently, I think, and then he should get some good results. Not that he hasn't got quite a few already, by the way. Outskirts of Huy here now, as the riders run down by the Meuse. This has been an incredible attack, whatever you think, in conditions like this. I'm just wondering, though, the wiseness of such a long sortie by Michele Bartoli and Dembaka, and of course Camazin, who's still ahead of the field with the upcoming Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and this man is the winner of that race for the past 2 years. Just how much energy has he thrown into this today, especially in the cold conditions, which must make him very tired. 2 hours in the front, and never looked to be slackening in the pace. He's always looked good, and this is the one race he's, well, not the one, but one of the big classic races he's never won, although he's been challenging with a 4th and a 5th in the past. Into the streets of Huy now, and then we'll flick up the climb. Slight slowing of the pace now, because Bartley knows the way up the Huy, so does Dembaka, and I think with 1.2 kilometres to go to the finish, they'll be on the climb. This is really the start of the climb, although it's not significant, just for a few minutes before they start the actual climb up the wall itself. And it really is a formidable climb, believe me. If you ever get the chance to go to Huy, try walking up the wall, and when you come round the corner and see just how steep it is, you'll be amazed. Kilometre to go. Well, it would be just over a minute of cycling if it wasn't uphill. But right now, Dembaka is going to have to work out what to do here. That's why he looked over his shoulder, just to make sure nobody's coming. He knows the odds against him winning this are pretty slim, but if he can just land it right, he might get one over on Bartoli. The Dutch have only had one victory in this race, by the way, and that was Joop Zoetemelk back in 1976, when it was over 227 kilometres, and it was raced between Verviers and Verviers, all in the Ardennes, all the towns around. This is the start of the climb now. It gets steeper just around the corner as we flick right and then sharp left. The crowd, the very brave crowd, have got absolutely soaked today watching this race, which has been run over nearly 5 hours. It's a good idea to make sure the brakes aren't catching, I would think, Martin, as you start the climb. Bartoli just staying out of the saddle, almost tempting the Dutchman to come alongside him. Look at the difference in the build of these two riders. The little lithe figure of Bartoli and the rather much bigger man from Holland. It's all that cheese, probably. Now this is the right before we take the hairpin left, and it's not just the steep bit in the middle, but it's a nasty little drag out towards the line over the top, where you've really got to hold on to your power output. Bartoli looking good, sitting in the saddle. This is the sharp left turn, the Italian flag flying on the left of the road there. The American flag, well, the best American in the race right now is Marty Jemison, and he's in that chase group at around about 4 minutes. Now this is where you normally start the attack, and it's who lasts longest survives to win in this case. Oh, and the motorbike behind almost lost it as well, but they've recovered. We almost had no moto cameras. Bartley shoulder to shoulder. These two gentlemen are going to let strength decide the winner of the Fleche, because they're going to go up side by side. Neither is hidden in the slipstream of the other. They've shared the pace for 2 hours. There's the Dutch flag as well, and now Bartley goes, and there's not a lot of reaction from Den Bakker. I think he'd already conceded. The Belgian police watch him passively because there's no Belgian here today, but look at the acceleration of this man. Now, is this the start of the weekend double, which isn't the weekend at all now, but even so, the man that's won Liège-Bastogne-Liège for the last 2 years, can he make it 3, and this time couple it up with his victory in the Flèche Wallonne? Because Michele Bartoli has made his effort, he's got the gap, now the legs must be absolutely screaming, and he's got to hang on just that little bit longer. Sat in the saddle, dropped it up a gear, found some more acceleration. This is everything now. And Bartoli drives up to the finish, just like his Italian compatriots Fondries and Argentine and Furlan have done in the years gone by. This time it's Michele Bartoli, who's about to convert his 5th of last year, his 4th of the year before, into a win this time. A massive crowd here on the climb as well. They brave the conditions to appreciate what has been a real show of attacking cycling today by these three. And I say three because it's really bad luck on Oscar Camazin, who is still to finish. Now this is when it's really hurting Bartoli, but unfortunately for Den Bakker it's also hurting him, and there's not a lot left. And in fact Michele has found a little bit more of acceleration there as the gap opens right out. Look at the face of Martin Den Bakker. He's still nonetheless celebrating his best season as Michele Bartoli continues a great year for him. This will be his 5th win of the year, and probably the best in Flèche Wallonne. A good average speed too of 40.3, nowhere near the record by the way. A couple of kilometres now short of that, but in these conditions who cares. Martin Den Bakker gets over the line in 2nd place. The clock has ticked by 14 seconds. So they are in, and now it'll be a while. Further down then on the climb itself, it looks as though Mario Ertz, this long, tall, lanky Belgian, is going to give the home crowd something to shout about here. They spotted the Lotto colours as they cheered him on now away from Oscar Camazin and Michael Bogert. They're the other two riders. There's Camazin. So Camazin's done well. He's going to hang on for 4th. Where's Bogart? There he is. Bogart, the champion of Holland, continues the season which got him a victory in Paris-Nice this year. He's still up in the thick of it now as we come towards the end of April. But this will be the best result for this Lotto rider, and Jean-Luc Vandenbroek, the manager and general director of Lotto, will be pretty pleased that he's found another man now to add to his stable. André Schmil, of course, is the man for the different types of classics like Paris-Roubaix, Tour of Flanders. Now he's got a man who appears to be able to be strong enough in the climbs as well. So Mario Ertz comes clear. In fact, the clock is just coming up 3 minutes now, so it's a big gap to these three, and the main field is on the climb as well, so they weren't that far ahead. Camazin, the world champion, has now shown his form. He looks as though he's on course for a good Giro d'Italia. And Michael Bogert, certainly no disgrace to the tricolour jersey of champion of Holland at all. But Ertz is the man today, outside of Michele Bartoli, in this terrible weather. Some would say very Belgian, and he should ride well in these conditions, because when I lived in Belgium it rained every day like this for 6 weeks. But you get used to it. As Mario Ertz comes up towards the summit, he will get 3rd place today. The world champion, 2 victories under his belt from last year, the Tour of Lombardy and the world title, Oscar Camazin, now heading up towards what will be 4th place. There's the clock coming up 3 minutes, and it's going to be even over that on the line. It's going to be 3:05.6 probably. And then Oscar Camazin joins him just a little bit further back at around 3:12. And then comes Michael Bogart, so it'll be 5th for the Rabobank champion. And the chase behind is close, because this is Udo Boltz here, the ever-reliable telecom man, who's leading the rest. Marco Velo from Mercatoni Uno. Koos Moerenhout is also there from Rabobank. Rabobank had a good day out today. They're going to get 3 men in the top 10 finishers. Bogart gets the line just ahead of Udo Boltz. And then Marco Velo, the name I think every cyclist would love to have, he gets over the line in 7th place today for Mercatoni Uno. Pantani, by the way, not riding today, you may have guessed that. Jens Voigt is the rider for Credit Agricole, and they're going to continue to come over the line here one by one. Seiko have put in Paolo Salvadelli there, just passing through the screen. He'll have passed over about 10th. Benesto looking at his watch, that is Mansabo. Gianni Farazin from the Mappe boys. And that looks like the Benesto's Eitor Osa. Now, what's in this little group here of mixed legs? Well, we've got Marty Jemison on the left, and that's been a good ride by Marty today as he stamps his way up the climb. He's going to get a top 20 finish here, and that's going to say a lot for Marty. Andrea Noah and David Drebelin are going away. Marty, just look at the face on Marty Jemison here. This has been a terrible day. If anything, these are the worst conditions right now at the finish as they continue to zigzag their way up. Jörg Jatska is the Telecom rider in that little group as Rebelling comes up to the line here. Andrea Noah and Marty Jemison crossing the line now as the clock tells us. You can't see it, but I can, just short of 4 minutes. There we are, 4:48. So that's a very, very good ride indeed. US Postal are also shaping up for a great season. There's the result though, a very emphatic win for Michele Bartoli from Martin Dembacker, the two partners in crime today. They left behind Oscar Camazin, there'll be talk about that, but the rest of them all came in over the next 5 minutes. This was the shoulder-to-shoulder battle between two gentlemen professionals who'd ridden the last 2 hours of the race together. They chose to just ride side by side and made the best man win. And on this occasion, there was no doubt that was the Italian Michele Bartoli, before a crowd who actually love Bartoli racing in this part of the world because he is such a popular bike rider. They won't be at all unhappy it wasn't a Belgian first to the top of the Mur de Huy today. And just inside 5 minutes. So Michele gets his first Flèche Wallonne trophy. Now, can he make it an Ardennais double by winning Liège-Bastogne-Liège for the 3rd time? And just before I go, don't forget, visit us on our website. Lots of interesting things for you to view there. The address is www.worldcycling.com. Until the next time, this is Phil Liggett saying goodbye to you all.